In the recent years, I was questioning and trying to restructure my process of working, going into much slower modes, stopping entirely and thinking about options for subtle works which could promote social processes, reading Franco Berardi and Bernard Rodowsky, researching plants, gardens, and landscapes, the beginnings of botany and the beginnings of cataloging plants, as that world was just unfolding back then, and looking at what documenting living plants would mean today as that world fades. Plant dyes as extractions. I've been building a weaving loom and started to weave fabrics which would ultimately become clothing, patterns which could embody us today. Thinking about time rather than space, body rather than display. What would be a potent work today? Hovering over instead of asserting, not providing information or knowledge, but probing. A subject ceases to be a subject. Amalgamate, and at the same time still live as one single particle in it all. The role of the gardens were constantly shifting and adjusting and allowing for simultaneous perceptions and activations, uniting almost in a schizophrenic way these disparate seeming functions. The gardens show a mentality or approach that is on the one hand intellectual, creating a mental image and a map of the social world, and on the other it is an activation and incorporation of daily life. A space that is simultaneously a hedonistic and a sacred space, an encyclopedia of flora and a functional agricultural garden, a political statement or emblem in itself, performance space and earthwork, art at the cross-section of nature and culture. I believe that we need a space like Tetskotsingo today as a mindset, with all its facets and ambiguities, a simultaneous activation of thoughts, philosophy, cultural practices, and daily life, an octopus. Whether this space is a real physical place or a situation, an event, an object, a person or group doesn't matter. What I mean is that it activates and animates a form of humanness. I'm wondering about the role of art in relation to that, and what grounds in the field of art would be necessary to create and inhabit it. These are the thoughts that I have gathered while reading the books of Franco Berardi and Rudowski that helped me to create a vision. Singular individuals as potentials. The need for subjectivation. To face one's own potential. The process of becoming subject means to define and keep defining oneself in the environment, to practice. Subjectivity, or rather the process of subjectivation, is constantly measuring itself against chaos. It constitutes itself in relation to an infinite flow. From there, the creation of a cosmos, a provisionary order, is possible. Subjectivity does not side with order, since it would paralyze it. That's why it needs to be variable and singular. Chaos is an enemy and an ally. The greatest weakness is the greatest strength. There's no need for displayed steadiness, but for constant transformation, translation, and chance. A symbol, a practice, a universe, a map. Single individuals embody their visions. Active positioning, be at home, to work all the time is impoverishing. Subjectivation made possible through the glimpse. To support the glimpse, make it bigger. The normal size glimpse is boring. Use it like a tool and use it like a fool. Make fun of the glimpse in order to intensify it. Use multiplicity, size, situation. The glimpse is connected with doubt, because there's nothing similar out there to what you sense. The doubt is the signifier. Follow it, because it is the process. Doubt is a form of faith. a movement magnifying the internal and singular, each to her own rhythm, friendship, a state of being relaxed and energized at the same time, like bamboo in the wind. To proliferate singularities. By the word singularity, I mean the expression of a never-before-seen concatenation. It can be an individual, a collective, but also an event. By the word singularity, I mean an agency that does not follow any rule of conformity or repetition, and is not framed in any historical necessity or sequential understanding of history. It is an emergent, a self-creative process, which is the process of creating culture and of making art. Accelerated time leads to a collapsed future. But to look beyond the future, the gaze into the dark, work with imagination. Only what we can think, we can create, we can live. Art can constitute a fusion of chaos and cosmos, a chaosmos, neither foreseen nor preconceived, not like an explanation, but like an eye, to work with the eye and the foresight, the disembodied and not yet lived as a plane for potentials. To project a psychic space, an artist has to see things in order to decide. My mom lost the unknown, the invisible, around the corner in the dark. To be in a vivid state of preparation. The event is not predictable because it is not the development of what we presently know. The event is a creative gesture creating a new refrain. In Japanese gardens, the new is grown on the old. And when I speak about this, I mean it in relationship to the field of art. I mean it as a cultural necessity. I mean it as a political necessity and a personal one. Degrowth, through withdrawal to autonomy, to start from exhaustion. If we emphasize on the productive side of withdrawal, we've been working too much. We are still working too much. Society does not need more work, more jobs, more competition. On the contrary, we need a massive reduction in work time, reweave the fabric of social relation. A radical passivity would definitely threaten the ethos of relentless productivity. The task is precisely this: to escape from paranoia, to create zones of human resistance, to experiment with autonomous forms. A new concept of humanism can be founded on an aesthetic paradigm, since it has to take root in sensibility. The voice and poetry are two strategies for reactivating the emotional social body. Only slowness is fast. Rest, sleep, hibernate. To wait 1 year for your work to collect dust, and then take a photograph. Concepts, artistic forms, and friendship are transformers of velocity. Art can have the logic of a guide. Everyday culture and life, food, sleep, clothing, and bodies are a political, social, and ethical practice. Art should sleep, eat, wait, dress, and have sex. Daily life is the cosmos. Daily life is the cosmos. Daily life is the cosmos. The work is like a link or a conjunction to it. To embrace daily life, which is non-accumulative, non-exploitive work and non-competitive, we will not find a solution, not unless a new consciousness and sensibility surfaces and spreads. It's the logic of the rhizome. A rhizome has no beginning or end, but always a middle between things, interbeing, intermezzo. The rhizome is alliance, uniquely alliance. Reversing art from interesting back to the sphere of interest. What if art turns into a life-changing force? Abolish the separation between poetry and mass communication to reclaim the power of media from the merchants and return it to the poets and the sages. In the meantime, start working towards a change. My own work is generated from a psychic space, from an ephemeral interaction with my surroundings. It's a call for immateriality, using materials, objects, persons, encounters to find a form of working immaterially. How can I produce something that is materialized but not matter? How can I produce objects that don't illustrate a condition but are the condition or notion? I'm not interested in the object per se. I see it as a screen on which to project a psychic space. Every embodiment, every materialization is speculative, manifests a temporary moment, has a hypothetical past and future, and is the possible development of an idea. It's about self-scattering and claiming the disembodied as a potent space, not as negative hysteria. Ephemeral doesn't mean to disappear, but to mutate. Every step points to the next and the one before, which are always present as phantoms. This way of thinking appears in the virtual space. The basic element of the digital is projection. How can I use this mode, unfold the virtual in multiple forms, and project its ephemerality onto different social spaces? Is it possible to cultivate a universal presence or form of appearance? I don't allude to modernist concepts such as the Gesamtkunstwerk or the Bauhaus or to capitalist branding. Ignoring the boundaries between genres is one possibility to situate yourself where the non-functional, the unnameable, and the non-logocentric can exist. A place of instability, ambivalence, and circularity as a site of connection and relating to the world. The media I use aren't exclusive, however. They're variable tools. I work with the specificity of thought and a non-specificity of practice. Basically, my work is homeless. The idea of homelessness means that I allow space to generate ideas without initially thinking about materiality. Not only does one and the same science system mutate in endless transformation and distortions on different information carriers, the identity of the motif itself also shifts from abstraction to symbol to pattern, pressing itself into different contexts or hovering above them. Fabric. I was looking for a flexible way of working where the form of the object was connected to the moment and could shift. Fabric is material, but it opens out in many directions. It's potentially transformative. What's important to me is that in whatever form, it always refers to human existence, in clothing, as dwellings, as the bearers of symbols in the decoration of the surface of our bodies and world. Rug, flag, tent, coat. Fabric represents a cursory presence and hence also flexible fields of meaning and function. They are at once form and non-form. Fabrics may relate to psychic renderings through patterning, the use of a particular material or the manner they are worn and utilized. Clothing. It's not about clothing per se. It's not about fashion. It's not about the functionality of clothing, but about the necessity of an internal space on the outside. How can the internal find a shape? The internal is singular, and singular is potential. Bernard Rudowski, clothing as first form of dwelling. The ideal house is movable, mobile, variable, adjustable, and changeable, is an extension of nature, is simple. Non-tubular clothes. Use the uncut fabric. Wear it through folding, pleating, and pinning. The one who knows how to wrap him or herself looks the most beautiful. To explore the psychological effects they can have on the wearer and on the other. Personalized clothing. To wear propaganda, to wear information, to publicize a point of view, an attitude, a projection. The clothing is half done. It needs to be performed. It is open, missing the body. It needs the body. Object is longing for its completion. Body. What we always understand, brutal, cosmic, and raw. Figure-based works, a script, a sphere, an emotional index. I can still read the body position of the skeletons in the graves. Humanness is body. Positions as placeholder. Body as matter, body as abstraction. The relationship with light, me, the sun, in between skin. Patterns. How would patterns look that embody us today? Reanimate, re-establish the practice of creating patterns. Design dictates a formal principle. It's not about formalism. Patterns which are connected with meaning. Meaning in a sense of power, faculty, influence, charm, potency. Not design, but ensign, envisioning a sign. From an email a friend wrote to me. Design, the prefix D meaning negation or removal, as in decompose or devalue. Perhaps it would make sense to call it resign, re meaning to refer or return, as in refer or return or renegotiate. But problematic, since resign can mean to quit, which takes us back to the latent negative of design. I couldn't really find a prefix that worked at all to describe it. I liked ensign, en meaning to bring into or intensify, as in entangle or enlighten, as in Adele is such a good ensigner. Danke.